Hello and welcome today to this video. I'm going to explain to you what loops are basically. I'm going to start with an example of what for loops are. I'm going to show you what the standard syntax is and how you can use this in a real exercise in Visual C Sharp. First of all, let me explain to you what for loop is. So it looks like this. I'm going to explain to you what this is in a minute. And print results. Okay. This is what I've typed. So now this is the standard syntax of what for loop looks like. Remember, why do I need loops? Let's understand this first. There are three types of loops: for loops, while loops, and do while loops. But why do I need them? Why is there a necessity of using loops in real life? Let's say there are 200 passengers traveling in an aircraft. They're supposed to go in like Etihad Airlines, and their aircraft got delayed. So the airline would need to send them a message or call them somehow and inform them that the passenger, whoever is traveling in this such and such flight, should come 2 hours late because for some reasons, for some technical or schedule reasons, the aircraft is not available and the flight will be departing 2 hours late. So if there are 200 passengers flying in that aircraft, then all of them should be called and messaged and informed that this is going to be delayed for 2 hours. Now, if that is done one by one, it is going to take a lot of time and it has to be manual procedure, and somebody has to be opening the records of the passengers and doing this manually. Now, if we make a program for this and do this in loop, this SMS can be sent in a loop. So this is one, if you want to do bill calculation for like hundreds and thousands of customers at the end of every month, you need to do something called bill generation. So you send them whatever their total bill is for the end of every month by email. And if there are thousands of customers that your company has, then you should do this in loop, because manually it gets and it takes lots of resources, and loops can do this work very easily in a very short time. Okay, so now let's go ahead and understand this. What happens for a loop to work is you have to define a starting point. Where should it start from? It should start counting from 0, or start counting from 1 or 2 or maybe 1000 or 2000, whatever. There has to be a starting point. That starting point we define over here, that you start from 0, count starting from 0, and after you know what the starting point is, you also have to know where you should stop. So you should stop at 10. Okay, so you start at 0 and you stop at 10. And how do you reach 10? Okay, so you reach 10 by adding 1 after every cycle. This is what it means. So you start at 0 and you should stop at 10, and after every cycle you should add 1. Now let me show you what cycle is. A cycle is the loop. It will start from here, int I is equal to 0. It will go to check the condition I is less than 10. If it is true, then it will go inside this loop and do this, whatever is inside this, do calculation, print results, whatever is inside this, and come back to I++. It will do I++ now. After the loop is finished, whatever is inside, it will come back to I++, and then again it will go to I is less than 10. It will go and evaluate this if this is still true. So one cycle or one iteration is finished, and the end of iteration it goes to I++, and at the end of iteration, end of the cycle, and then it goes back to the decision. So only first time it does the initialization, which is this I is equal to 0, and then it checks whether the decision is true. If the decision is true, it will go down, I is less than 10, yes, 0 is less than 10, and do whatever the calculation or whatever the printing out the results or taking input or whatever your complex logic is there inside. And once that is finished, it will go out. The end of the cycle, it will do this I++, whatever your iteration is, which is counting the end of cycle. So 0 is finished, now you reached 1 at the end of first cycle. Then it will go and evaluate, is this decision still true? If it is still true, it will again go down and go through this loop and do it again. Send SMS again, or send a bank account statement again. generate a bill again and send it to the customer, and go back and do one increment I plus plus. So from 0 to 1 was the first cycle. The second cycle is 1 to 2, and then again it will go and check the decision. If the decision is true again, if it is true, then it will go down and do the calculation. At the end of the third cycle, it will increase this to 3, and it will keep doing this again and again unless this condition is false. I is less than 10 is always true as long as it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Up till 9 it is true, and it will go inside this loop and perform whatever you want to do inside. When I becomes 10, 10 is less than 10, this is the decision box. Is 10 less than 10? This decision box will say no, it is not less than 10. 10 is actually equal to 10. So this will have to quit this whole loop, and it will go outside and it will go to the execution below this for. So this is how it works, and this is what for loop is, and the other while and do while loops are also very similar. Now let me do a dry run with you over here. Let us do a dry run of this. Over here at the right hand side, I will do print I, whatever the value of I is, I will print it, and at the left side I will say whatever the value of I. In the memory I will write this down over here. So my program does this. My program has a loop which should run 10 times, and what it does inside the loop, it only prints I. That's all. No calculation, no nothing. So for the purpose of understanding, this is what we're doing. First of all, in the first iteration, what happens? The program starts from here, int I is equal to 0. So in memory, I becomes what? I becomes 0. Then it goes further. I is less than 10 is a decision box. Yes or no? Yes, I is less than 10. 0 is less than 10. Then go down. As we have learned, it goes down after evaluating the decision if it's true, and do the calculation or whatever the statements there are. These are the statements. This is only one statement, print I. It will go and print I, which is the value 0. At the end of this, it will go back and execute whatever is after the decision box. After the decision box, there is I plus plus. So in the memory, I becomes 1. And then it goes back to the decision box and checks if this is still true. 1 is less than 10? Yes, 1 is less than 10. You are given the permission to go inside. So it will go inside again and do whatever the calculation or the generation of sending SMS to Emirates Airlines passengers who are traveling, that this will be late, etc. Whatever your business logic is inside this will be executed if this decision box is true. So it says print I, it will print I. Then second cycle finishes, it goes to I plus plus. In memory, this becomes 2 now. And then the decision box again is 2 less than 10. Yes, it is. Go down to print I. Okay, print I. There you go, print I. And then this will keep carrying on. Until it becomes the same value. Let's do this at 9. At 9, what will happen? When I plus, when this 9 is printed, it goes back and does I plus plus. In the memory, I becomes 10. And when it becomes 10, it will go and check whether this decision box is still true. No sir, 10 is not less than 10. You're not allowed to go inside. Please jump out of loop. So jump out of loop, and here is where your loop ends. Your program can continue. After this, you can have more statements inside, but your program ends. So you have printed from 0 to 9, not 10. You've not printed 10, even though the last number in memory, I, was 10. But you've not printed it. And you have printed how much? From 0 to 9. These are total 10 numbers. So if I ask you to print from 0 to 9, this is what you do. If I ask you to print from 1 to 10, then you will start from 1, and less than equal to is what you have to print, what you have to use, less than equal to. Otherwise, it will print from 1 to 9, not 1 to 10. So we have started from 0 and we have printed up till 9, total 10 numbers. So this is how for loops work. It has initialization, and then decision, and then increment, and then you actually print this out. Now notice what happens is, if you want to do all of this in the opposite order, if I ask you that you understood what loops are, now I want you to do a print but in the reverse order. Instead of 0 to 9 or 0 to 10, you should display 10 to 0. Now what you should do, you understand there has to be an initialization, a starting point. This is your starting point. So this is your starting, and then there has to be a decision. This is your decision, and then there has to be, after end of every loop, there should be like I plus plus or increment or decrement, which is reduce, or some changes. What changes do you want to do after the end of every loop in your cycle? So I want to add one, or I want to reduce one, I want to multiply, divide, whatever. So whatever changes at the end of every loop you do, you should do at the third. This is the third box. This is the first one's the initialization or starting. Second one is the decision. Third one should be your increment or decrement or whatever you want to do to this. What this will do, it will ensure you're counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It is actually counting your cycles. So because this is increasing, your I will ultimately reach the value of 10, and due to this you are actually controlling your loop. So now let me show you how to count from, instead of 0 to 10, how to count from 10 to 0. To count from from 10 to 0, what I will do is I will change this loop from 0 to 10. Instead of this, I will change this loop and write for int I is 10. Now I will start from 10 this time, and then I'll go down to 0. I is less than 10 and I is greater than 0 and I plus plus. Why do I do this? Because I want to start from 10 and I want to stop at 0. Remember? So this is what I write in as a loop, and inside this loop I will do the same thing, print I. That's the only statement I have inside. And let me dry run this with you. What will happen is, the initial value of I in the memory is what? Is 10. And I say after it is initialized, is I is greater than 0. Yes, I is greater than 0 because 10 is greater than 0. And then you do go inside print I. Then it will print this I. And instead of this, one thing, instead of this I1 I plus plus, I have to do this I minus minus. Why? Because I'm actually going down from 10 to 0. So I have to write this I minus minus over here. Actually I minus minus is what I will be writing. Yes, so I minus minus over here will actually, at the end of every loop cycle, it will come down over here and this will work. So this started with 10. Yes, 10 is greater than 0. Come down, print I. Come down, print I. And then at the end of the loop, make the value of I as 9. Okay. Go back to the decision. Is 9 still greater than 0? Yes, it is. Go back to print I and print the value of I. Okay. Go back at the end of the loop, do I minus minus. So in the memory, I becomes 8. And then check again. Is 8 greater than 0? Yes, it is greater than 0. Then go back inside the loop and print the value of I. And hence this will keep on continuing until 0. So this is actually a loop which I have created, and this will keep on until the value of this is 0. Or let me stop at 1 first and show you what will happen. At 1, when it comes to I minus minus, I became 1, it will go and check, is 1 greater than 0? Yes, it is greater than 0. Go inside and print 1. Go inside and print 1. And then go back and do I minus minus. So I becomes 0 in this case. Go back to the loop decision and say and check, is 0 greater than 0? No, it's not greater than 0. Then now is the time you have to skip the loop and go outside. This is how actually the loop works. So let's look at this example. This is going to use some loops, and then it is also going to do some calculation. What this example says is, you have to create a program in which you take the name of the city as a input from the user, and then I'll allow you to pause the screen on the video and read this whole scenario so that you can understand why I am creating what I'm going to create now. Okay, I hope you understand what the scenario is about. Then I'll create a new project. Okay, so I have a reasonable interface ready. I have all the information which was required from the scenario ready on my interface. I've created and given proper names and given proper text to all the components of my interface, to all the controls of my interface. I've created this group box. Inside this group box, there are 5 labels. Inside the other group box, there are 2 radio buttons, and all of them have different text and different names as appropriate. And now what I need to do is just to save my interface and start run and test the interface. Is this what I had imagined and I'd like to look at, or there's something change in the interface that I'd like to do? Maybe I need to reduce this from this wide to this much, and I'll display the whatever the result is over here in this area. Otherwise, city, I can write something. I can populate, select the growth rate. What is the growth rate? Select forecast years. How many years I need the forecast for? Now, this was not written in the scenario, but I'm just showing you how many years. Based on this, I will run my loop. So let's close this. Go back to the developing the program. So now, when you double click this button, you should be able to see and do the code. Now, if you do not understand where to start from, you should do the flow chart. That actually helps you create the logic. So let me help you with that. First of all, you need to read the values of city. This is not integers. Read the values in string. Read the value of string of year in integer, because the value of the population of the year will be integer. 2014, 2015, 12, 13, whatever. The value of population will also be integer in millions. Of obviously 300 million, 400 million is the normal population of a country, but we are talking about cities. So the population of city are actually normally maximum a million, so to say, or maybe there are more, but we'll stick to integer. Growth rate is supposed to be float. Forecast years is also integer. How many years you want this forecast for? And then local and expatriate. Which one of these options are you selecting? So these are actually just checked. We don't have to convert them to string or integer, because we will be selecting. If it is checked, then do something. If this one is checked, then do something else, meaning select a different, display a different message. So now we'll go directly to do forecast. And once I come down over here, now remember, normally I copy and paste my code to Edmodo. This inside this method you should be creating, copying and pasting the code inside this. Right click here and paste inside here. If you copy from Edmodo, don't paste outside here, don't paste here. Inside these 2 brackets is where you need to paste that code from, if I am sharing something with you on Edmodo. Alright, so now let's create my variables. Int city is equal to city txt dot text. So now, sorry, not integer but string, because the name of the city is always string, and the population is in integer. Int population is equal to population txt dot text, and then you have to convert this to integer by doing int dot parse. This will convert it to integer. Then you have int year, what is the current year, int dot parse, and you do year txt dot text. So what is the text written on the year text box? And the next thing you want to do is city, year, population, growth rate, and forecast years. How many years do I need to get this forecast for? 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. And forecast years is equal to years combo dot selected item. So now this will give me what is selected, and do selected item, and then you have to actually convert this to a string by writing toString, and then convert the whole thing into integer. Int dot parse, and give this inside the integer. So I've got a city, population, year, forecast, forecast years, city, year, population, and then the growth rate. I need the growth rate. Now the growth rate is in percentages, so I need to take this in float. growth rate is equal to float.parse growth combo dot um, selected item dot toString. So now this should give me the value of growth rate. Now at this point, if you have any confusion, what are the values have been read correctly or not, you can place a breakpoint. Message box dot, this is just a placeholder for breakpoint. You can just write an empty something, nothing inside this message box dot show, sorry, and place a breakpoint over here. So this does not give me any error, message box dot show. By clicking over here at this place, if you click, then it will add a red dot over here. What this means is it will stop the program and show you what is the current status of the program when it is running. So I'll run this, save this and run this, and let me fill up the form first. City is, for example, Ras Al Khaimah, year is 2014, population is 250,000, maybe more, let's say like 25,000 only. Growth rate is 1.0, forecast years is 5, and I've not read the type of local population, whatever. Let me click this and do forecast. What will happen, it will stop over there and show me what are the current values of all the objects used in the program. So because I clicked over here, the program will come here and stop over here. Now if I select to continue after this it has paused, I can click here and it will continue the program. But I've placed this breakpoint over here, so I'd like to read what have you read in these variables. So in these variables it will show, let's go to city. It has read in the city string variable Ras Al Khaimah. It has read in the population, which is an integer variable 25,000. Year variable, which is an integer 2014. Forecast years, which is an integer 5. Growth rate, which is a float, it has read 1.0. So I say fine, so my program is working fine. So this is what the use of breakpoint is about. Okay, there's nothing. Let me just stop the program, remove this, also remove the breakpoint. So I've read the correct values. Now I need to do the loop. Actually, I should now be calculating the growth rate and display it in a message. If it is a expatriate population selected on the form, then show this messages. If it is local population selected on the form, show these messages. So the difference is only of the messages. So let me now run this calculation of growth in loop. And first of all, you understand how do you calculate the growth. You calculate the growth in this way. Like for example, if there's something 100 and I tell you next year it will be 5% more. This means 5% more, which means 5 out of 100 there will be more, which means the total will be how much? 105. It will increase 5%. This is what it means. 5% increase means whatever was before, you add more 5% to it. So before it was, if it was 100, I add more 5%, the total becomes 105. Similarly, if the population of a city called Ras Al Khaimah was 25,000, and you say the increase of this population after 1 year is 5%, then the calculator should say the increase is how much exactly. So 5% means 5 divided by 100. 5% is 0.05. 5% of means multiply. 5% of 25,000 is 1250. So this means increase is 1250. You add to it whatever was before 25,000. So the total will be 26250. It says 26250. So the 5% is how much? 5%, when you said the 5% is actually 5%, 5 divided by 100 of 25,000. This is how you calculate. 1250 is the actual increase, but the total from before whatever the value was in addition to 1250 is 26250. So a shortcut to do this, if I want to do a shortcut to do this calculation, I can do this. 25,000 multiply by 1.05. What is one for? 1 for is 25,000 itself. You add it, you multiply it by 1, it will give 25,000, nothing else. But 0.05 will give you the 5%, and it will add it to 1 and give you the results, like 26,250. So I hope this should be clear now. So let's do one more example. Let's say if there is something which is 175, and I tell you that this 175 will increase by 3% next year. So 175 will increase 3% next year. How will I do the get the last value after increase? Multiply it by 1.03. Will give you the total even after addition. So the increase plus the original value is 180.25 after adding 3%. 3% is this. Why not 1.3? Because 1.3 is 30%. See, 175, if I tell you there will be 30% increase, then you will multiply it by 1.3. 0.3 is the increase only, but 1 is the original value itself. You multiply by 1.3. This is a quicker way to get the result of the increase plus whatever was the original. So this is 227. So this is 30%. But if you want to calculate, for example, 1.25%, 1.25%, 1.25%. This is what it means. Per means divide, cent means 100. 1.25% is this 0.0125. So if I say something increased, for example, my city's population, Ras Al Khaimah's population increased by 1.25%. This means 25,000 if it's the current population, multiply by 1.0125. Because remember what was 1.25%? 1.25% was 0.0125. So add to it 1, it becomes 1.0125 multiplied by 25,000. This will give me, this is the 1.25% increased value of the local population of Ras Al Khaimah. So that's that 1.0125 or whatever has been done. Then I have to divide this by the whole value by 100, and then you will see that this is actually, because when you're doing calculation you should do calculation in points, 100.0f. So this 1.5, if the user has selected 1.5 over here, percent, this will store and float growth rate, will store over here 1.5%, which is 0.015. Now to add 1 to it, you just saw why does it make sense. Growth rate is equal to growth rate plus 1.0f. This means what we are doing now is something which we did over here. 100 into 5%, increase 5% is multiply it by 1.05. So similarly, this is what we are doing. We have added 1 over here to make it 1.015. Now the next thing I am going to do is I am going to calculate the population. Population is equal to whatever the population is right now, multiply by growth rate. What is this growth rate? If the user has selected 25,000 as population, multiply it by 1 point, whatever, if the user has selected 1.5%, 1.015. So this is what it will do. It will multiply it by 1.015. So what this code will do, it will increase it by 1.5%. The current population will be increased. Now if you want to see the breakpoint, just type in anything over here and see what is the current value. By showing or seeing whatever the current value is of every variable over here, just place a breakpoint and run this and fill up the form like Iraq 2014, population 25,000, growth rate is 1.5%, forecast here is whatever. We have not done the calculation of this and this one yet. I'll come down to this later on, but for now I just like to see the values. So the population at this point should have become 25,374 because I selected 3%, which is 1.03. Okay, so now this is working for me. And the reason why I've done this, what you see is typecasting over here, is we are actually changing all the float to the integer, because population is the integer. Population is integer, and we are changing after the calculation its value to integer. So let me now just remove this breakpoint, and now what I want to do is to do this calculation in loop. How many times? How many times? The question says 7 times. You should do this for 7 years. But if you also want to ask the user how many times would you like me to calculate this for, and for this purpose I have used this do forecast years, and I am actually asking users how many times would you like this loop to run. So if the user says do the forecast for 10 years, then the loop will run for 10 years. If the user says for 4 years, then the loop will run for 4 years. 4 times, I mean. And then to do this, remember what we have to do. For int I is equal to 0. This is the initial. Where does it initialize? The counter. I is less than, how many times do you want us to do? Forecast years combo. This is my years combo. This is years combo. How many times do you want this to do? This many times. If the user selects 10 times, then 10 will come over here. If the user selects 3 times, then only 3 will come over here. I'd like to do this many times, forecast years, and at the end of every loop I want to do I++, because I want to get out of the loop whenever you have finished doing the forecast for a single year. This is what this loop is about. This will start at 0 and say if I is less than forecast years, yes, 0 is less than. If the user selected 10, yes, 0 is less than 10. Go down and do the calculation, and then after the calculation is finished, go up and I++. Make I as 1, because we have completed the first cycle. Then you go back and check this. Is 1 is less than 10? Yes, it is less than 10. Go down and do the calculation again of the forecast. Come back and make it 2. Is 2 less than 10? Yes, it is less than 10. Go down and do the calculation again for another year. So you keep on generating a message over here, which is the solution requires you to print this out. Expatriate population is this, Lucan population is this, according to whatever the year is selected. So for this, what you can do is create a string message is equal to, initially it is empty, because only after this the population growth is calculated. You are going to display this message. After the 7 or 8 or 10 years is finished, you will display in the end whatever result label dot text should be message, whatever message you construct inside this loop. So inside this loop, what we will do, we'll do this message is equal to, and this should look like expatriate population for 2012 in Ras Al Khaimah is 25,000. So we'll go back to our code, and let's do this for one radio button. Let's forget the radio button for now, and I'll come back to this later on. Expatriate population for, it says 2012, whatever is the year is this one, is year in Ras Al Khaimah, in, and now you want to write the city name. This is the city name. In city, you know what is string manipulation. In city is plus, now you do the modified growth rate, whatever is the growth rate, is population. So this is your population now. Okay, for each year this loop is going to run and show you the population, how many times, how much ever times the user has selected this. But you also want to increase the number of years, because you want to show like this. Look at this message, expat population for 2012 in Ras Al Khaimah is 25,000. Does it show like this? Yes. For the next year, there's 13, 14, 15, 16, the upcoming years, it should increase the year to show next year what happens. You just write over here plus plus. So every time the loop functions, it will increase the year also, so that the message comes right. In city is this population, and every time it will increase the 3%. So let's run this, save and run. then I am going to write the values over here. City is, for example, Dubai. Year is 2014. Population is 300,000 and the growth rate is 2.0. Forecast year is 3 times. I want this to be displayed 3 times. So when I select do forecast, I have not selected these two. The code has not been written, but let's just run this and show. The label is over here. Do forecast. Expatriate population for 2016 in Dubai is 318,360. So why only once? What has happened, the program has shown only the last message. So the error in the code, there is an error in the code. It should say every time this runs, message is equal to. It is changing the message, not adding the message. You should be adding to it because you want to display all the values. Message plus will be add whatever the previous value is and the new value, which is what you are calculating over here. Minus n will force it to go to the next line, if you remember. Now let's run this program again, and now is when we should see the correct expected output. So city is again maybe like, say for example, Al Ain, and year is 2014. Population is 300,000. Growth rate maybe 2%. Forecast, I need this for 5 years. Do forecast. Right, I see the message now. Expatriate population for 2014 in Al Ain is 305,999. Okay. Expatriate population for 2015 in Al Ain is 312,118. So every year it is increasing how much? 2%. But I said for 2014 it is 300,000. So it is doing it. It is showing 2014 is after increasing to 2%. So I need to show for 2014 is the current population, whatever the user has shown me over here. Now you have to go back to your code and verify what you're doing wrong. So there is nothing actually what you're doing now wrong in terms of the loop, but what you should be doing is, instead of year plus plus, you should be doing plus plus years. So I need the forecast for next year, so don't show me the current year. So the next years, 7, 8 or 10 years, let's say whatever is the name of the city, it is for example Kuala Lumpur. 2014 population is 500,000. It's a big city. Growth rate is 3%. Forecast is, I need to get this for 9 years. Okay, do forecast. So now I got now forecast for starting from 15, not 14 in this case, and 3%. So now this is increasing and I got the correct message. So what happened to these two, local or expatriate population? The way I will do this is, if it's local population, then add expatriate. So I just need to change the message over here. Change the message over here. If the radio button, depending upon which radio button is clicked. So I'll do this. If expat radio dot checked, then do this. Print this message and copy this message. Else, if expat radio is not checked, then what else is checked? Obviously radio, the local radio is checked. Then you copy this message over here and then just change from expatriate to local. Save this. Okay, so you now know that if expatriate population was selected, then you show this message. Otherwise you show the local message. This was the only requirement. So I run this now and I'll see for example the city's name is Adelaide. 2014 population is 300,000. Growth rate is 1%. Forecast years for 5 years. And if it's for local population, I'll see local. If it's for expatriate population, I'll see expatriate. Okay, so this was about it. I hope you enjoyed and understood what loops are. Thanks for watching. Now to do the same thing in the while loop, this is what you would do. I disable the for loop, the complete for loop, and whatever the calculation was inside, and create a while loop like this. Let me just create this again to show you. First of all, you need to have a counter of I is equal to 0 again, and this is while loop. Do the same thing. While counter is less than forecast years, and inside this, type whatever is inside the for loop. Inside the for loop, not including the for loop, not including the brackets, whatever is inside the for loop. because this is the same calculation essentially. But in the end, once this cycle finishes, the for loop does this I plus plus, which the while does not do. You have to do this over here in the end, and this will give you the same result. This is doing the same thing through the while loop counter zero. Sorry, yeah, this is the counter plus plus. So now this will give you the exact same result as the for loop.